Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Box for this week's Rugby report. And we've actually just had a press release where Rugby has invited an additional 26 players to virtual alignment camps, in addition to the 56 that have been invited to domestic players who have been invited to a physical alignment camp. And what's quite interesting, if you look at the camp, is an interesting trend, and it's something we've spoken about before, and that's the fact that if you want to play for the Springboks, you need to be playing your rugby in South Africa. Now, let me quantify that. So, that does not mean that we do not pick overseas box. We do, obviously. What it is showing, though, when you look at these alignment camps and who's been invited, is that if you want to play for the Springboks and you have not been capped, if you are a young player, if you are a player who's uncapped, your best chance of playing for Springboks is playing for a South African side. We have got players going to these alignment camps who have played 250 minutes of sort of rugby at a similar level where other players have been playing in the international circuit, have been playing for years and years and years, and are not being recognized, being called up to these camps. And it's an interesting one to see what everybody has to say. I mean, it's a great for our domestic game. It really is. It shows you that the pathway to becoming a Springbok is through our domestic teams. If we look at the alignment camps, I think there's only two players who have actually been called into the box squad in the last 3 to 4 years, purely based on their form overseas. That being Nicholas Janssen van Rensburg and Jasper Wiese. Everybody else who's part of these box squads have been a Springbok before going overseas and then getting kind of the call up and the likes of that. So it continues to show that, whilst you don't have to play rugby in South Africa to be a Springbok, that is what the pathway is. And I'm going to use some examples to sort of talk about that. So in the virtual camp, for example, and this is really interesting, the virtual camp is for the overseas-based players. So if there's ever a chance for players who are based overseas to get involved in the camp, then they'll be invited to this virtual camp. And, for example, Nicholas Janssen van Rensburg has been invited. Obviously, Jasper Wiese has been invited. An interesting case is Marnus van der Merwe, who remains on the radar. Now, he's a player who was first invited to a Springbok alignment camp whilst he was at the Cheetahs. So he's obviously been to the process before. They've gotten to know him. He has now gone overseas to the Scarlets. He would be another player who, in theory, would kind of make a Springbok debut from playing overseas. But, again, the pathway was through the Cheetahs. It was performance at the Cheetahs which made sort of the play him stand up, and then he made the move, and now he's really on the radar. So the main thing is, if you are a young player right now, if you want to play for the Springboks, you need to understand that if you want to play for the Boks, your best opportunity, your best chance is to basically try and get onto the radar, get into an alignment camp, meet the coaches, get onto their side, get onto the system basically, and then look to make the move. Tyron Green, for example, he made the move to Harlequins, and apparently he even had a conversation with Rassie Erasmus speaking about the fact that if he were to go overseas, would it affect his ability to become a Bok, and was apparently given reassurances that he could still become a Springbok whilst overseas. Now, there's nothing to say that he would have been a Bok guaranteed if he had stayed here, but my gut says he would have. I think that you look at Koen Horn, for example, getting an opportunity last year. You've looked at people like Kane and Moody, for example, who's thrown in. He was very young. We've seen Edwin van der Merwe given an opportunity. The rugby Tyron Green was playing before he went over, I think he would have been a Springbok. Jean Augustus, another one. I think he would have been a Springbok had he decided to stay with the Stormers. You've now got players like a Reynard Ludwig, for example, going to the lineman camp. And Pilo Gamede, Renzo Duplessis. He's played 3 games for Lions this season. He's getting an invite to the lineman camp over players like Jean Augustus, who's playing really good rugby. I mean, Jonathan Roach, what a fantastic story for him. 22 years old. He's been invited to the lineman camp. He made a Stormers debut in December. Bernard Janssen van Rensburg is a player who's been getting sort of into the Premiership Player of the Season, several times. And 28 years old, not exactly like particularly old, and he can't get into a squad. And he covers 12 and 13, plays week in, week out, has been playing at the highest level. I mean, this season alone, he's played over 1,000 minutes. So it's just an interesting thing that I wonder if there's a certain amount of bias to it. Obviously, it is to a certain degree, but what thinking is? Is it the thinking of, we really need to have access to these sort of players, the likes of that. We believe the players over here, they kind of understand what it means to play for the Springboks. They dedicate themselves to being in our local sides to then get that kind of call up. I don't know. It's an interesting concept, but it's definitely a thing. It is definitely a thing. The squads show you that much. There are players who have had very little exposure to sort of rugby at the highest level, getting call-ups, getting opportunities, where players who are playing overseas and playing overseas for a while and are playing very well don't get looking. Raymond Roulet, for example, Dylan Lates, players who played over there for a long time that don't get sort of call-ups, don't get opportunities and the likes of that. Carlos Sardi, for example, I mean, and you look at players who've come back to South Africa and get themselves back into the Springbok mix immediately. I'm talking Aka van der Merwe. I'm talking Kobus Visa in these lineman camps. They've been back and playing for Aka van der Merwe's playing a couple of seasons, but Kobus Visa in his first season back, he's already back in the Springbok mix. Lots of these players, for example, have made the return back to the Bok to South Africa, and all of a sudden their Springbok sort of careers seem to have been reignited. Deon Fourie coming back to the Stormers, and all of a sudden becomes the oldest Springbok player ever to make a debut. So it's an interesting concept. I think it's something that players need to be very aware of, that their Springbok ambitions do hinge on them being involved in South Africa. And that's why I think the likes of Henko van Beek, Asenate Talikanye, Franco Horn, these sort of players all committed to new contract with the Lions last week, definitely had their Springbok ambitions centered around that sort of search. So, for example, Hachiva Diamani, he obviously decided he wasn't going to make it. He's got overseas. I think that Hachiva Diamani are better than some of the players involved in the lineman camp. But not playing in South Africa, they've been preferred. He's not. Right or wrong? I don't know. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.